now, I mean, we've seen that the geek culture has become pop culture, and that opened the door for, all these blockbuster movies, from DC and Marvel, comic book movies, basically. And I mean, it just entered the pop culture world. And now all the things that were geeky or nerdy, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, are hip now. Give aliens all the credit. Aliens get a lot of credit because we assume that amazing advancements or amazing technology couldn't possibly come from stupid humans. Granted, I do agree that humans are pretty stupid, but some credit, please. Humans do come up with some pretty awesome stuff.
Jason McClellan is an author, podcaster, TV personality, veteran UFO researcher, and journalist. He's a bourbon enthusiast, ska and punk devotee, vegan, and he's an animal lover. You might have seen him on Nat Geo Sci-Fi History or at the conferences talking about UFOs, and I'm reading this word for word right off his website, but that's why he's here. He's also a brilliant writer. Jason McClellan is coming right up after this on My Alien Life. My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Taking the great pleasure tonight in being joined by internet sensation and UFO enthusiast Jason McClellan. McClellan, of course, is the clan surname of the medieval Scottish origin. It is the anglicized form of the Gaelic patronymic MacGill Phelan. This name is recorded in the genealogical rolls of the year 1467 in Edinburgh, and the translation being the son of the friend or servant of Phelan. Did I get that right, Jason?
I'll roll with it.
That's Wikipedia. Jason McClellan, thank you so much for joining me and welcome.
Oh, Cameron, it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So, are you Scottish? Do we have that in common?
So, I like to say that I am more Irish than Scottish.
Really?
Yeah, from the limited research that my brothers and my dad have done, that's what we've settled on. That being said, however, it's actually an adopted name, so not blood for me.
No, not, and neither is my name. Somebody came up with that in Ellis Island. I have no idea where they came up with it, but I know that that's not what they arrived with. And anytime a bunch of Norwegians or even Scottish or Irish arrived in the U.S., they're kind of doing some name changing, but. What I really want to talk about tonight is I was looking at your website, and this applies to me in a big way because you're making vegan pigs in a blanket. I have a huge amount of dietary restrictions that includes, get this, no carbs and salt. And I love beer, I love pizza, and Indian cuisine. So what's the secret there? How do you keep vegan and make that work for you? Because it's a lot of work. I mean, you're preparing a lot.
Yeah, you're right. It can be. However, your restrictions sound so much worse than mine.
They're terrible.
Because I need all the carbs. I need all the salt, right? I mean, I am what I call a junk food vegan. Like, I love all the fried food. I like burritos. I like vegan hamburgers and vegan sausages and vegan cheese. Like, lay all that stuff on. Now, I am not a healthy vegan by any means. And, I feel for the people who are both vegan and like gluten-free and all that stuff, because I don't know what you eat at that point.
So you were actually making vegan pigs in the blanket. So what are those like? I mean, what are you putting inside that? That's a vegan sausage of some kind.
Just a straight up vegan hot dog, just a regular old hot dog. And the great thing, I mean, science is amazing, and we've come so far with food just in the past 2 years, certainly, but past 10 years. I've started being a vegetarian probably a little more than 20 years ago, and vegan for about 7 or so now. And back when I started down that road, it was really hard to find foods that sounded appealing for me to eat, first of all, but also to sort of replace the foods that I love to eat that taste great, like bacon, like hamburgers, like sausage, all the good stuff. But fortunately, there's so many companies, that's all they're focused on right now. And all the big food manufacturers now are buying into it, investing so much money into creating these products that are essentially analogs for their meat, relatives. So you can get pretty much anything now that, a meat eater, a non-vegan would eat, but get the vegan version of it.
I've tried it both ways. I've gone vegan and vegetarian, and what I have going on is I have type 2 diabetes. Not to bum everybody out here, but it's one of those things that you got to stay away from the carbs, and you got to try to substitute things in there that you really love to taste. And the taste of. And I do love bacon. I do love burgers, and I'm crazy about pizza. But and I also have a salt problem. So it's like a constant struggle. You're always looking, and I know you probably are too, and you're very aware of your surroundings when you're in a grocery store and what you're going to pick up there. But I have found some things in made out of like jackfruit. They make like a barbecued pork substitute out of jackfruit. It's, of course, you're never going to get it or hit it 100%, but it's worth it. It's healthy.
Yeah. And, it's getting easier and easier, and this doesn't help you, I'm sorry, but, in fast food places, in chain restaurants, you're seeing more commercials on TV for plant-based things. I mean, Burger King has a Whopper now that's made from plant-based meat. Carl's Jr. has a burger that's made from plant-based meat. Red Robin, I don't know. So many chains now carry these burgers and sausages too now that are made from plants. It's becoming like this mainstream thing because more people have this desire to eat something different, and not all of it's motivated by health, certainly, and mine certainly isn't too. I'm a big animal person, and that's what drove me ultimately to become vegan, is because I love animals so much. So everybody's got a different thing, but I think manufacturers of food and the food industry itself, they're seeing that there's a big market for things other than just meat and dairy, and we're getting all these alternative things now that we can choose to consume.
Meat and dairy and cigarettes. Those are the big three. The big tobacco, big meat, and big dairy. I mean, they're a force out there. So what do you do when you're on the road? I mean, how are you able to manage that when you're out on the road, because you don't have the cooking facilities that you're used to having at home?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just an added step because I do a lot of travel, both for work and for fun. I love traveling. And so that's just another step in the planning process for anywhere I go. Anywhere I go, that's, I love food. That's usually one of the first things I look up and research. So I know what places I can count on if I want to go out and get something out. I can always go to a grocery store. I mean, that's no problem. But if I want places that are easy just to go out and have dinner or something, I do that research ahead of hand and make a list. So I know I've got some places in my back pocket, but again, more and more it's becoming so easy. Most places will have at least a vegan option, but a lot of them are now having like vegan sections on their menu or separate vegan menus. So it's becoming a lot easier. But I do like that research part. It's kind of fun looking up and getting excited about certain restaurants. And, you know, with my restaurant research, I also have to research like breweries in the area or distilleries in the area, because that's also part of my travel. I like going to good restaurants, and I like checking out local breweries or local distilleries.
Yeah, there's, you know, what I love about traveling, and when I was a much bigger eater and could eat a wider variety of things, was absolutely going to the food channel. And, you know, if they were in the city or if they were in the country, you know, and finding out as many places, interesting places that I could find, and then try to just reproduce that trip that they did on the Travel Channel. It was great. It was great fun. You know, I remember one time I'm going down to New Orleans, you know, and Adam Richman had been there, and of course he ate his way through there and like 15 dozen oysters or something like that. But yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. You mentioned beer, which, you know, right now, you know, in the world and in the US especially, there's so many different beer opportunities. I actually live right by a brewery, and it's a 10-minute drive to my office, which is next to another brewery. So that's really good luck. But as you know, when you're out there traveling, there's a million different kind of brews in, especially in the Northwest where I live. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I find it endlessly fun, right?
It's great fun.
I know they all can't be good, but I usually find something I like. And that's the fun thing for me going to breweries is they have so much product to choose from. So I'll usually go and get a flight and, you know, go down the line and taste what they've got to offer. And then if I find one that I really enjoy, then I'll get a pint of that.
You know, honestly, my favorite is right next door here, and it's been my favorite for like 12 years. But, you know, I'm an IPA guy. So when I'm going to say probably 15 years ago, I couldn't have touched an IPA. It was too bitter. It was too much. But now everything is kind of going in that direction. There's some incredible beers there. You know, I live in Montana, and every town of more than, you know, 10,000 people they have an excellent brewery. So what about in your part of the world? You're in Phoenix, right?
I am in Phoenix, and, you know, IPAs have taken over. They really have. Like, it was a big thing in the Northwest, and I lived in Boise, Idaho for a few years, and, you know, IPAs were pretty much all you could find there. But I mean, that's the case everywhere now. I mean, breweries just latched on to IPAs, and even a lot of smaller breweries that I would talk with about IPAs, they would say, look, we have these other beers, and yeah, they're the beers we prefer, but because of public demand, we had to get rid of those to make room for more IPAs because that's what people are drinking. And I've never really been an IPA person. Like you know, I was very interested when I would go into breweries to see their IBUs listed, the International Bitterness Unit,
right,
because that would tell me how bitter the beer was going to be and if I would like it or not. And I don't like hoppy beers. So that put me off from IPAs for the longest time. But in recent years, I started experimenting a little more and more because everybody's experimenting with IPAs too, right? I mean, we're not just dealing with straight up IPAs anymore. People are getting very creative and using lots of interesting ingredients and doing hazy IPAs and juicy IPAs. And these things are so complicated, so complex that, you know, I always find myself feeling the need to explore and, you know, get a taste of it and see, maybe I'll like this one. And some of them I do. They're just so confusing and so complex that it's kind of like wine. You know, not all Chardonnays are going to taste the same. Not all Pinot Grigios are going to taste the same. So periodically, you gotta be brave and try it. Maybe you'll like it. But here in Phoenix, here in the Southwest, there are, you know, it's a lot of everything because breweries now, it's just all about experimentation. And I love that. That's what I love about small craft breweries is the experimentation, trying new things, using weird ingredients. And there's some breweries here in Phoenix that do that. They like to use local ingredients So you'll find some beers that have like cactus in them.
Right.
Interesting things like that. I'm a sour guy primarily, sours and gozas. So those just by themselves, inherently are experimentation beers. So I never know what I'm going to get with those really. And even if I find one I like, it's most likely not going to be replicated. It's going to be something different next time.
Right. I used to go crazy with breweries that would come up with these really strange names for beers. I also used to not like the fact that, they would add different ingredients other than barley, hops, water,
Right.
and yeast. That used to just drive me nuts because it's an amazing process that you can make so many different beers by just using those ingredients. But there's actually a brewery in Portland called I think it's in Portland. It's called Coalition, and they make a coffee IPA, which were two things that, I wouldn't, they're great on their own, but, I ended up trying that one time and, been sold on that ever since. It's one of those amazing things in life where you can get your coffee and your beer and, things like that when they're done right. I mean, they're absolutely outstanding, and this one is absolutely done right, and I love it. So,
well, on the coffee beer, typically coffee beers are heavier beers, right? Dark beers,
right,
stouts.
right, and this one is not, so it's beautiful.
Right, and there's one that's made here in Phoenix. It's a coffee Kolsch. Kolsch
Nice.
is a German style lager basically, and it's a very light beer. And having a coffee beer be a light beer, it's really kind of an awesome experience. The first time I had it, I was like, this is coffee. This is a light drinkable beer. This is almost a breakfast beer.
And it could be a breakfast beer. It should
Right,
be
it's coffee.
It should be a breakfast beer. Yeah, I'm absolutely into that. That's one of the things that again, if I go to a city or wherever and I'm looking for a good brewery or I'm looking for a really unique food experience. What I found though that, in the Northwest, and I don't know if it's like that down where you are. I mean, we have so many beers here that you can't get them on the shelves. I mean, and it's crazy because, you'll have a section of the grocery store that is, the supermarket is just slammed with beer. I mean, they will have a whole aisle dedicated, and then across the aisle, sports drinks, energy drinks, and it seems that's kind of what we're about right now. And I'm just kind of wondering where that came from.
Well, I think it's the demand. Beer is very popular. Craft beer is very popular. And when the big guys got on board with that and started buying up all of these successful craft brewers, that, allowed them to push it more, and they control the shelf space in the grocery store primarily. So they got to expand that. I think it's really, and people are conflicted with that. There are definitely divides in the beer world when it comes to, Anheuser-Busch and, the big three to control every single beer there is basically, except, small independent guys. When they buy or take over a small craft brewery, a lot of people don't like that, but I'm fine with it. And the reason for that is I love beer and I love good beer. And I equate it to the music industry because I started my career in the music industry. And, there's always that backlash when bands would sign with a major label. They'd say, oh, you sold out. And then fans would be done with the band because they signed with a major record label. Well, what did signing with a major record label do for these bands? Well, it allowed them to record their music and get their music distributed, to a much wider audience than they would be able to just selling their music at shows. And that's the same with the beer, with the breweries. They could continue just selling their beer at their little brewery in their hometown, or they can have their beer distributed all around the country and all those people can enjoy their beer. And so I think it's a great thing as long as these big guys don't come in and change the product. If they can come in, give these guys a lot of money and say, we like it, we want to own it, keep doing what you're doing, we'll stay out of your hair. That's the ideal situation.
Yeah. And what we're seeing now though, too, is, you have those nights where, I just want a cheap 6-pack. I don't want to pay $8.99 or $9.99 a 6-pack. And maybe you want a 6-pack of PBR and you're going to save $1 now. where,
Yeah.
5 years ago, it could have been a $3 savings. You just don't see that anymore because there's so much competition.
Right. That's right.
So,
No, it's wild to watch beer prices for sure.
you talked about music. How did you start out in the music business? Tell me about that. Cause I know you're into, punk and ska.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I grew up going to a lot of shows and, primarily punk and ska shows because that's the music I liked. So just going to show after show after show, I decided when I guess it was when I started college that I wanted to be involved somehow. So I started, and I wasn't musically talented at all. So I knew that it wasn't really going to be starting a band or joining a band or anything like that. It's going to be more on the business side. So I started producing concerts and put on a lot of concerts for a few years. Developed a lot of relationships with the local scene and a lot of local and national bands. And then after a while, I decided, well, I really love doing this. And it's what I'm spending all my time doing. And part of producing a show is doing all the work, creating this thing, getting all the people there, making the money, but giving most of that money to the venue. And so I decided I need to open a venue. So that's what I did. I opened a concert venue and, decided to go all in on that. But that was short-lived because I am a good husband. My wife got into law school, so we moved to New York City. So I sold the concert venue and still did some stuff in the music industry for a while in New York. I managed a music organization there that was a complete 180 from what I'd been doing. And I was used to dealing with snot-nosed punk kids, this rebellious counterculture crowd. But I found myself managing this high society music organization that had partnerships with the Met Museum, and our office was in the crypt of the largest Gothic cathedral in the world, Church of St. John the Divine in the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Wow.
And we're an early music organization. We played period music on period instruments, so classical, Baroque, medieval, Renaissance. We would put together. We had orchestras of musicians, and we would have an annual concert series. We would produce and record audio CDs in conjunction with exhibits that the Met Museum had at the time. So they would, whatever the theme was, the time period, they would ask us to put together a CD of music. We'd do that. And then after the exhibit, it would be there in the gift shop for people to buy. So it was a very interesting reversal of roles for me to go from dealing with punk kids to New York's high society. But it was a lot of fun. And especially having your office in the crypt is kind of awesome.
So I think one of the great things about New York City is that, if you have a vision and you have a work ethic, you can make something happen. That's what you did, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it took a while to make that work. I started out doing some random jobs there, including being a video game tester. That was kind of awesome too. But I love New York City. It's still one of my favorite cities. But that being said, I think it would be a lot more enjoyable for me now if I were to live there than when I did, because it's a city where you need a lot of money. And I didn't have a lot of money. So, and my wife is going to law school at Columbia, which is a very expensive school. So, we were just kids out of college and living in New York. We lived in 350 square feet. That was a 1-bedroom apartment.
That's a tiny home. That's a tiny home. You guys were way more hip than you even realized. You had the tiny home.
Yeah, except we were paying $2,800 a month for that.
Oh my God. You're kidding.
That's New York.
Yeah, I heard a story this morning on the news, and that there was a landlord in New York City who I think he had a 650 square foot apartment. He made it into basically 3 or 4 cubicles that were, so basically the apartment was 2 levels. So they're approximately, 4 feet of headspace in each one of the little apartments. And he was renting those out for $600 a month.
Well, that's a bargain. I mean, I'm
is.
sure you could get people to do it. I mean, they do worse than that in San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can do it, go for it. But, I'm older than you. And so I'm 53 and I don't want to date myself, but back in the day, when I was going to college, I was a local stagehand. So I got to touch with a lot of bands and one of them that came to town in particular that I had never heard of, and I wasn't interested in working the show and I just wasn't going to do it. And then they talked me into it, was Fishbone. And,
Nice.
I'd never listened to ska and, I was not much of a punker back then, but I mean, that band came and since then I've seen them probably 6 times and they ended up blowing me away,
awesome.
And it kind of changed the whole course of my life. And it's amazing how music can do that from time to time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it does for so many people. Yeah. And being involved in the music scene and kind of growing up with that. Yeah. I mean, I've watched that transformation take place so many times. It's awesome.
I just remember saying, I'd never heard it and never heard that kind of music. And,
Yeah.
and I walked up to them and I just, it was during a sound check and I said, what was that? And they looked at me like I was, I thought there was going to be a fight because they kind of took it wrong, but that was a compliment, right? Because, I was completely floored and, I listened to a lot of rock and roll and I grew up right on the Canadian border and most of my rock and roll came from Canada. And, I was a big fan of anything that came out of Canada at the time. And, this was so different and so original. It was just really an amazing feeling to know some guys who actually put something together that they had a vision for and wanted to produce because, that was music that came from their heart. So what do you listen to? What are some of your favorites?
I try to force myself to make time for music these days, but I really don't listen to very much. Because I seem to work too much. But when I have spare time, it's so funny how music works. Like I try to explore and discover new music because I feel there has to be new music. I don't want to fall into the trap of being a crotchety old guy and, complaining about all the kids' music these days. But primarily I listen to the same bands I listened to when I was in high school, so Rancid, Bad Religion, Less Than Jake, Social Distortion, Yellow Card, The Offspring, Blink-182.
Yeah, those are all amazing. I was just thinking of Social Distortion before I called you tonight, and that was one of the bands that that's kind of my go-to band when I'm feeling in the mood for that. But I think one of the things that really, really kind of knocked me out in the last 10 years is the Palladia channel. I don't even know if that exists anymore because I had heard they had sold it, but you could watch the Palladia channel on DirecTV or something like that. And they were always playing these big festivals. So I really got into those bands, that were festival bands that would go out and, they didn't do much on their own, but, people would go nuts over them, if they were in a festival and kind of made me wish that I was living in a bigger city, London, New York City, and get to hit the festivals. Yeah. But I mean, the festivals were awesome when I was younger. I would certainly the Warped Tour. I would go to that, right. A lot. But as I got older, I couldn't take the festival, especially in Phoenix, right? I mean, those festivals and certainly the Warped Tour. When I started going to those were held in places that were essentially out like in parking lots on blacktop, right,
in the summer. So you're talking, 115 degrees, but also on blacktop. And back then too, I remember like one of the venues where it was being held, they didn't allow people to bring in water. So people were like passing out left and right. People were getting heat stroke and it was just awful. But I was youthful. I could take it. But as I got older, I thought, man, about 2 hours in, I was done. So I can't wait for the headliners to come on. That's not for 5 hours. I'm going home.
Right. I'm just out of Missoula, Montana. And one of the things that I think is the greatest thing ever is that town is turned into a music town. It always has been, and it always has its draw. It always has its little venues and places too. But it a lot like you said you lived in Boise, and it's a lot like that. But now they have 3 outdoor venues, and they got a couple of really neat indoor venues, and it's a couple of nights a week, you know, and it's just gotten to the point where it's hard for me because, you know, I have to pick and choose. I can't hit all those things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you know, it's driving home for an hour at 1 a.m. and you know, like you said, the festivals, they wear you out. I just don't know how much longer I can do this. But I went to just see Jackson Browne a couple weeks ago, you know, and it's a whole different crowd, you know, a whole different crowd than other bands you would see, because it's an older crowd, and it's an amazing crowd that just basically people were there kind of living out a dream and showing their appreciation for somebody who's been playing music since like 1970. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I rarely get out to shows these days, and I hate that because there are a lot of good shows happening, a lot of same bands again that I grew up listening to and seeing live are still touring, and you know, I should be out seeing them, but it's hard to find the time, and it's harder for me because, you know, I don't know, I feel like such an old person, but you know, shows go so late. I wish they would keep older people in mind and say, you know what, we're going to have a show that starts at 7.
Right.
Not just like Doors at 7 and then, you know, the headliner will go on at 11. No, headliners should go on at 7.
And there's a couple of really good clubs I like to, you know, go to, and they may start at 11:30. You know, it's nothing for them to do that. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to them. It just means, you know, they're going to definitely sell alcohol till 1 almost 2 a.m. and they've had everybody in there for an hour and a half getting ready for the show already. So, you know, it just comes down to more beer sales, but it's pretty amazing. Right. I love it. I wish I could hit that, you know, a couple times a week would be great. But yeah, I don't have that kind of energy.
I know. Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I'm going to be seeing Social Distortion in Vegas next month.
Nice.
And that's at a sort of festival thing, and I think it's more during the day, so I stand a chance to make it to the end.
Very cool. So I know you travel a lot, and I was looking on your YouTube channel, and you did some 3 travel vlogs, and I noticed that you gave equal time to Hawaii, Costa Rica, and Island Park, Idaho, which I've been. I had to look up Island Park, Idaho. I've been within 15 minutes of that, you know, 20 times, and I didn't even know it exists.
West Yellowstone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been there a bunch of times, and you know, it's Yellowstone is not too far from me, and it's, you know, that's one of those places. Awesome. Idaho is great though. I mean, if you were from Boise, and there's so many great places and great unique parks in Idaho that are so unlike any place else in the world. I mean, Idaho is a kind of a place where people, you know, you actually have to want to go to Idaho to get to Idaho. So it's a great place.
It is. I love Idaho. I love Montana. You know, I think that's the most beautiful part of the country. I really do. And Idaho is kind of amazing because, well, I mean, a lot of states are like this, but I enjoyed my time there. We could go around and do different things that were relatively close. We didn't have to drive too far to get a new experience. And something I learned while I was there is that Idaho has the most natural hot springs of any state. So they just have natural hot springs all over the place. You could drive up into the mountains a bit and find these natural hot springs, just go and soak in like this natural tub, basically just sit in the rocks and be like you're in a hot tub. It was awesome.
Yeah, there was one close to me, Jerry Johnson Hot Spring, and people come for miles and miles and miles just to walk through the woods, you know, another hour to get to this spot, and it was amazing. And I mean, it had a cult following, it had a weird following, and it had a natural feel to it because people would come there obviously for aches and pains and things like that, and then they'd have to sit with these naked people that came from who knows where, but it was an amazing experience. So let me ask you this, and You use the word on your website. Is geeky or nerd a bad word anymore, do you think?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Isn't it cool to be smart?
It is. And certainly, for years now, we've seen that geek culture has become pop culture, and that opened the door for, all these blockbuster movies, from DC and Marvel, comic book movies, basically. And it just entered the pop culture world. And now all the things that were geeky or nerdy, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, are hip now.
Right. Even the coolest people have their devices.
That's right.
Really hardly anybody goes without a computer. So let me ask you this, are you going to go to Area 51 on September 20th?
I'm not. I am not. And the reason is
I'm going to watch it.
I have plans. But nothing's going to happen. It's Woodstock all over again. And they've, I said that from the beginning, that's likely what it would fold into. But, they went so far as to call it alien stock. That's what they're calling it. So I don't think, I'm curious to see, how many people show up. I think it's great for people to, essentially what they're encouraging people to do is, it's basically a celebration about aliens. Yay. All the people like aliens and UFOs. That's awesome. But, poor Rachel, Nevada can't really handle that.
No.
It is a small town of I think their population is 90 maybe. They don't have a fire department. They are not set up for a festival of any kind. And that's what they're getting. They're getting a bunch of, it's like Burning Man, a bunch of people coming and camping and doing their thing in this little town that can't really support it. So no, if I'm going to go to Area 51, it's kind of a pain in the ass to get to, first of all. I love Vegas. I'm in Vegas all the time. I probably go to Vegas every month or every other month because I'm so close. That's, nice neighbor of mine. But still, Area 51 is quite a ways from Las Vegas. So, if I'm in Vegas having fun, I've taken time off work or whatever so I can be in Vegas, and then I want to go to Area 51, that's going to take an entire day just to drive out to stand at a gate and go,
right,
that's fun, and get back in the car and come back. So
and
not really exciting to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know if Rachel, Nevada would ever recover from something like that. It would change not that it couldn't use maybe a slight change, but it'd probably change the face of that town forever.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. That's an awful lot of traffic. We'll see how many people actually go out. Because again, it is quite a commitment to go all the way out there. There really aren't facilities, you're limited. It's not like you're going to be going out to dinner and all the stuff at all the restaurants there, because there really aren't. It's not like you're going to go out there and stay at a hotel and check out this funny little thing that's going on, because there aren't hotels. There's a little alien, but they've only got a handful of rooms and they're already booked. So, you're going all that way. You're going to be camping. You're going to be there. So I don't know.
And you may get stuck there for 3 days. If it happens,
some people might think that sounds fun. I don't think that sounds fun.
I'd actually just like to know that it happened or know that it didn't happen. I'm sure there'll be plenty of information for us to read about it from a distance away, but I really want to hear about it.
I like the idea.
Cool.
I'm glad that people want to get together, like-minded people, to, have fun and that's what sort of UFO conferences, the purpose of those are. I think the real value in them too is that social aspect of people getting together to be able to talk and have friendly debate and discussion about, things alien and UFO. So a party atmosphere is cool, having a concert and stuff, but Rachel's not really set up for it.
Right. I think one of the things that really turns me on and more than anything, if you take the UFO community and remove this part I like best, and what that is I love experimental aircraft. That's one of my turn-ons for Area 51, and I love test pilots. So in my mind, I believe it's, Area 51 is a perfect place for experimental aircraft surrounded by a radioactive exclusion area. And you couldn't plan
Right.
a better protection and isolation than a radioactive wasteland around an Air Force base. What do you think's there?
I think there's a lot more of what we know has been there, right? I mean, just what you said, experimental aircraft. There has always been, some pretty advanced experimental aircraft, and I'm sure that's still ongoing. There's no reason to suspect that it just stopped, or that all of a sudden, because we live in the social media age, that the military and the government tell us everything and keep us up to date on their latest and greatest. No, I mean, the reason it was kept secret back then still remains today. I mean, we don't want people knowing what our best and latest experimental technology is. We shouldn't know that, and it shouldn't be broadcast. So I think they're still doing that. I think because of the heightened attention given to that location, they're probably doing less of it there and maybe move some of their more secretive stuff to a different location. But I'm sure that's still ongoing there. I think it's a lot of experimental technology.
I think it really looks good too that we have this big area, actually several areas out there that are very, very top secret, and nobody knows what goes on there because, our enemies out there don't know what we're doing, and they can only assume that we have something major going on there. And quite possibly we may not, or even though we do, it may be disappointing. I don't like to think that way, but it could
Right.
be, it could be true. And we do have some amazing technology out there already. And it's,
We do. We have amazing technology, and I don't like to give aliens all the credit. Aliens get a lot of credit because we assume that amazing advancements or amazing technology couldn't possibly come from stupid humans. Granted, I do agree that humans are pretty stupid, but some credit, please. Humans do come up with some pretty awesome stuff, and there are some amazing technology people, some amazing scientists that come up with this stuff. And I think it's kind of insulting to say that there's no way that humans could come up with a lot of things that get credited to aliens. That being said, I always entertain possibilities. And given Area 51's weird history, and all the conspiracy theories and all the weird lore behind it, I certainly entertain the possibility that there could be something of extraterrestrial origin there. What that is, I don't know, but I entertain that possibility. I think it's unlikely, but I do consider that possibility.
Again, it's coming up with an idea and a dream and working your butt off until you get there. I mean, that's happened so many times that it still amazes me too. And I agree with you that people don't give us people enough credit for what we do because we're some pretty smart organisms. So how did you find your way into UFO investigation, research, and writing? How long has that been going on, and where'd that start for you?
That UFOs literally landed in my lap. That's the line I always have to use when telling this story. Really, and this goes back to 2008, I believe. I was just, it happened at work. I was working, doing marketing for a company, and the owner of the company came to me and told me this grand idea he had about how one day he wanted to start a company about UFOs and aliens. And, how can your eyes and ears not perk up when you hear something like that? So, I had to be encouraging and egg him on. So tell me more. And so we just talked for a while, and because he knew I had, this broad skill set of writing and editing copy to, anything web media to audio and video production. These are all things that he wanted to achieve with his company, with the initial focus being on a print magazine. So after we just talked for a while, and, it took many months of laying all the puzzle pieces and pushing them in place, but launched the UFO company. So, I transitioned over to that company full time, and I was a full-time employee at a company that purely existed to research UFOs and aliens. I'm one of the few people in the world who can actually say that I was paid a salary to do that full time. So I got to work for that company. That company was called Open Minds, and we built that thing into a serious beast. We published a internationally distributed print magazine, and it was probably the best UFO magazine that's ever been, in my opinion. It was a slick looking magazine, and you could get it in airports and grocery stores and Barnes and Noble, like all over the place. It was fun seeing that around and seeing how well received that was. But it was a bad idea, and everybody except certain people knew that from the beginning, that you can't launch a print endeavor this day and age, and this is many years ago now, and it was still a bad idea then. But it wasn't cost feasible. It was more of something that the owner wanted to do, and we made it happen. It was awesome to see it come to fruition, and we had a great team, on board with that, including Maureen Ellsbury and Alejandro Rojas. Created a great magazine. We also did podcasts and web series and did a lot of TV work, and we acquired the largest annual UFO conference, and we moved that to the Phoenix area and instantaneously doubled the attendance and grew it into getting recognized by Guinness Book of World Records as being the largest annual UFO conference in the world. So that was a really cool accomplishment. And, we got to do a lot of fun stuff. So I got to do that full time for probably 7 years, and then started doing stuff on my own as more TV work started happening. And Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 and now To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences called me up and asked me to come work for his company. He was just at the beginning stages of planning what is now To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. And he wanted me and my colleague, Maureen Ellsbury, to come work with him to help start this company. And so we started the initial stages of developing the company's website and developing content for that website. So when the company launched, they would have this stockpile of content in the form of stories all about just various paranormal topics. So we wrote stuff about ghosts, about Bigfoot, about other cryptids, about UFOs, about, all the good stuff. So that was a lot of fun creating all that content. And then eventually I wrote a book about UFOs called Only Weirdos See UFOs. And, I continue podcasting, I continue researching, I continue speaking at conferences and Comic-Cons and stuff all across the country. It's a fascinating subject. It's an interest that I've invested so much of my life and my career in that I can't get away from it. And I don't really want to get away from it. I'm so fascinated by it. And I just love the unknown. I love exploring the mystery of it all. And I'm fully aware that I'm probably never going to get the answers I'm seeking, but I still love the journey, and that's why I continue on it.
So what's it like when somebody drops that on you like that, where maybe you don't have any experience with UFOs and all of a sudden you're playing catch up and you're reading everything that comes across your desk and you're actively seeking out this information? How do you even get started from ground zero?
That's a great question, man. And it was sort of unreal. And I guess you had this experience with a lot of jobs, right? You start a new job and you might not know about a specific industry and you need to get up to speed on that specific industry or that specific company. There's always a learning curve. But yeah, when all of a sudden was put in this position of being one of the heads of a UFO company, and I didn't know anything about UFOs. I mean, I've seen some UFOs, but I didn't know anything about UFOs. I didn't know anything about UFO history. Knew very little about UFO lore, and knew very little about the players in the UFO industry. So yeah, it was a steep learning curve and a rabbit hole that I was thrown down, and had to get up to speed quickly.
So who'd you go to initially to find out? I mean, who was the first person you talked in detail about
here's
that?
Here's the thing, because of the company we started, we had a lot of people coming to us, and we were reaching out to people, and people wanted to be involved with us, and especially because we had the International UFO Congress attached to us too. That was really the key to opening up the network fast and hard. We were involved with the Congress even before we acquired it. So, going to the Congress, spending time there, working the conference, and getting to know all these people who were in the community, all the people who were on the lecture circuit, all the people who had books, all the people who had documentary films. That was my biggest introduction right there, just going to a conference that, just speakers alone had 25 plus speakers. That's a big pool right there. Plus, you have all the vendors there selling their stuff. You have all the attendees there who are also involved in the community. So it was a great, just jumping in the deep end right there to get right in the middle of the community. And from there, when you're doing podcasts and web series, you're reaching out to people who you've either seen speaking at conferences, or you've seen releasing new books, or you've seen stories in the mainstream media about, citing their work or doing interviews with. So with all the stuff we were doing, the content we were creating with our podcasts, our radio shows, and our video content, I would also reach out to these people and, start interviewing them, start getting to know them, start inviting them to our studio to just introduce them to our company. And so we developed, these working relationships with, most of the players in the field, and then quickly developed personal relationships with those people as well.
I absolutely love the people. And again, I say this all the time, but for me, it's about the person behind the experience, and I know all these people have experiences, but I love these people. I love Daryl Sims. I love Adam Stokes. I love Richard Doty. I love, Russ Kellett and Tom Carey, and these guys are awesome. And I love it too. A lot of times you're going to hear the same story, but you get to hear it from that person, and nobody tells that story like that person. It's absolutely amazing. And I could sit down and listen to it over and over again. Calvin Parker, the way he tells his story is just, wow, it's just incredible. And the first time that he told it to me, I was almost speechless.
That's awesome. And you're right. These people are all characters, and it's a totally different experience when you can meet people face to face and have an experience with that person. And I always tell people to not get bogged down in the world of social media, and don't think for a second that what you see on social media is reality, because it is not. I really encourage people to go to a UFO conference, preferably one of the main ones that happens every year and is consistent, has built up a following and gets a good quality and good variation of speakers. But when you have that pool of people who come there, like-minded people, the biggest, it doesn't matter who's speaking at these conferences, I always say, the big benefit of these conferences is being able to socialize with these people. Not just the attendees, you can easily socialize with all the speakers there too. That's what they're for. Everybody's approachable. These are normal people. And a lot of people just want to share stories. And the cool thing for me, seeing attendees who are at these events, a lot of them are there at an event like that for the very first time. They're still sort of in the closet, as it were. They don't feel comfortable talking about UFOs and aliens to anybody in their social circle, anybody in their family. They worry about being laughed at or being called crazy. That ridicule factor still exists. It's slowly going away, but it's still something that people have to deal with. So when people go to events like this, they're in, for lack of a better phrase, a safe space. They feel that, because everybody there is there for the same reason. And that allows them to listen to people who talk about this thing. They don't have anybody else in their circles to talk about this stuff. So that is eye-opening for them. And then they start feeling comfortable to talk about it, whether it's sharing an experience they've had or sharing their thoughts on any of these related topics. It's really cool to see them just open up and realize, hey, I can talk about this stuff here, and I'm not weird. Or if I am weird, we're all weird, and it's okay. So I love seeing that, and you know, people talk a lot these days about just how torn and combative the UFO community is, because that's what they see on social media. You'll see that with any sort of subgroup of society. You'll see it with religion. You'll see it with politics. That's just humanity. Humanity sucks. But, you know, get past that, understand that that's not how these people, and I can't say for everybody. I mean, there are jerks in the world. But most people, when they get together in person at these conferences, they're civil. They're actually hanging out, getting beers together. They're having discussions. They're debating, but in a friendly way. They're listening to other people's ideas and respecting the differences. It's a really cool thing to see. It's, you know, people getting to know the real person rather than just a persona online. And a lot of that tension goes away. I mean, even a lot of the key players in the UFO community, you know, these lecturers and authors and BBC all over the TV shows, people who've been doing this for you know, 30, 40 years, and you see always bad-mouthing somebody else, another researcher who has a different idea or something, and they're constantly bickering or whatever, even on stage at conferences having debates, yelling at each other. Right after that, you'll see them at the bar sitting together. They're friends. You know, that's the real world, and I really hope people take time to get to a conference and experience that for yourself.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this, the other side of the coin, is the fact that, you know, every single day I have people contact me and they want to tell their story, you know, and I'll ask them, you know, do you have 60 minutes and can we do this? And I try to encourage them, and there's, you know, thousands or more that have this amazing story that they want to tell. And I've had people tell me, you know, ladies tell me that my husband won't let me, and you know, I've heard of every excuse in the book, and I'm trying to encourage these people, you know, this is a good thing, and people want to hear you and hear your story. So there's that. And one of the things I want to ask you too, and you brought up, and I didn't know that you had actually worked with Tom DeLonge for the To the Stars Academy. You know, I always thought, you know, and I knew he was a UFO enthusiast, and I just knew he would bail. I knew he would, I didn't think he would quit music, but I knew he would go off on his own and try to do something or lecture or speak or something. I'm not sure what I thought he was going to do at the time, but what do you think is going to be the future of To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences? Where's that going to go?
Honestly, my opinion, my personal opinion, is that they are just getting started. I mean, they are laying a lot of groundwork for a lot of different projects. I mean, I worry at times that they've bitten off more than they can chew, because they are a very small operation, but they have, you know, some impressive firepower behind them and some very ambitious goals and ideas and products that they've put in place. You know, I think it's all really exciting. I just hope that they can maintain the momentum to see all those things come to fruition. I think it's really exciting, everything they're doing, potentially very important, the things they're doing. So all I can do is hope that they're able to maintain, and, you know, Tom, the primary person who's fueling it, doesn't get exhausted, you know, and run out of gas before these things can actually take hold, because they do take time. You know, they're doing a lot of entertainment projects. They've got more TV shows coming out. They've got movies coming out. Those things are all great. I'm personally excited for those. But I know they're taking a lot of the time and resources. So I hope more of their UFO specific things don't get lost or sidelined. I think we're spoiled because we do get a lot of this stuff leaked to us, because Tom gets really excited about this stuff. and he likes announcing it to everybody. Hey, we've got this coming. We're working on this exciting thing. And then, a couple months go by and people go, hey, you told us we were going to have this. Where is it? Right. And these are things that, the timeline for these things years out, but, we want things now. So he sort of does himself a disservice, and he knows that. But people need to manage their expectations, I think, and just be patient. They'll come when they do. But it's for Tom. I always tell people, I know he's a guy with a personality and a history that paints him as just this goofy rock star. But Tom, and again, with my background and everybody I've met in the UFO field, during my whole career, Tom DeLonge still remains probably the most well-read person on the UFO subject that I've ever met. I know that's surprising, very surprising to many people, but he really is. He knows his stuff. He has a lot of personal opinions too, and he's happy to voice those, and he does on countless interviews and on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Says a lot of things that sound pretty crazy, and these are just Tom's opinions that he's formed based on books he's read and different researchers he's talked to, and YouTube videos he's watched, and different things like that. Just like all of us do, it's a personal journey. It really is, and we all have to decide what sources we want to sort of take into our pile of evidence and fold them into our personal belief, and we adapt as we go on and learn more things.
He's really well read, like you said. And the other thing too is that he remembers everything. I don't know if I can read that much, and I could rattle off dates and times and names and just keep up that pace. I think the other thing too is when you're doing something like this, and like it is a business, and I don't know when they're going to come to this point, but they continually have to sell that brand, and that's tedious, and it can be boring, and it can be the part that's not as fun as the other part where you get to meet people who are believers and building this and that. But it's extremely tedious to sell that brand, but somehow he's got it to take off a little bit, and it seems like there's a lot of people interested. But I don't know. I wish him the best, and I hope it works out.
I do too, man. I really do. Like he is a fantastic guy. He is so passionate about this subject. I do not question his motives for a second. I know that he is genuinely passionate about this topic, and he is truly on a mission to change the world for the better. He's doing this for his kids primarily. So a lot of people doubt his motives. I don't doubt his motives for a second. But, he knows, and he's set up a very large and almost impossible mountain to climb. And I just hope he can keep pushing forward. I hope that, they're able, you mentioned the brand. I hope that's able to take off, and they're able to better monetize it, because, as somebody who has money, and you're funding a company basically out of your own pocket, you can only do that for so long. It stops being fun pretty fast.
So what did your family and friends think? I mean, all of a sudden you're the UFO, well, you're not the UFO guy, but you're part of that community. Cause I'm still in the closet on my side of the family, and I don't really have any intention of telling anybody, but what'd your family and friends think?
Yeah, so that reaction was always fun, when people would find out for the first time, and certainly with my family, it's just like anything else with UFOs, really. Like if you tell somebody you saw a UFO or anything like that, there's what they call the giggle factor, right? I mean, that was the initial reaction, where people would kind of smirk and laugh, and they'd see that I was serious. So, oh, you're serious. And then their attitude would change. And many times, and this included family, they would open up and say, well, I saw a UFO once. Or, well, my uncle had an experience, and the floodgates just open. When people find out that you're actually taking the subject seriously, then it comes out that they've got some sort of connection to a sighting or an experience, whatever. Everybody does. So they're just waiting for that wall to come down. They're waiting for the okay It's just that wall that's there because of the stigma, the ridicule factor, and it's really sad that it's still there. But it is getting better. But yeah, I certainly experience that a lot. And my wife is in the legal profession, and there were many years where we'd be out at functions with other attorneys or judges or other people in the field, and they'd be talking about boring law stuff, and there was always somebody, and sometimes it was my wife, but other times it was just other attorneys who would interrupt the conversation and say, well, enough of that. Jason, tell us about UFOs. They all knew what I did, and they were all just like dying to hear me talk about it.
Right.
So that was always really fun. And
got to segue into that a little bit, work your way, get him going, get Jason going, get him a beer.
Yeah, that's right. No, I was always happy to entertain. I still am. It's one of my favorite things to do, and in just unexpected situations where people want to talk about UFOs, I'd be happy to talk about UFOs. Sure. But with the family too. I mean, they were always supportive, and they certainly had a ball. When I started doing TV stuff, so they would, when there would be an episode of a show I was going to be on, they would all be excited. My mom would call around to all my relatives, Jason's going to be on TV. Yeah, so cool. That was really cute, and I really appreciated the support.
That's awesome. I had Tom Carey on last week, and what do you think? Do you think Roswell and maybe like Bob Lazar, are those stories all tapped out? Is there anything left in those? Can we glean anything more and put out more books and more movies?
I always say yes. I always say yes. And here's why. Yes to there's more, not yes it's tapped out. Yes, there's more. And these classic cases, whatever we want to call them, are important. They have an extremely important place in UFO history and just in the UFO subject as a whole. We can't forget these. I think everybody should be familiar with the details of these cases. And, I'm sure a lot of people have made up their own personal opinions on what they want to believe happened or didn't happen with all these things. But I don't know. People have different levels of what quantifies proof to them, or, whatever they need to close the book. But in my mind, a lot of these things, despite the evidence that does exist, are still sort of open cases, right? We don't know conclusively. And in my mind, that just drives me wild. You can't just push something aside and not have that conclusion. You got to keep digging. And, yes, it's unlikely we're going to hear from any new witnesses at this point. And even if we did, how reliable is that testimony so many years after the fact? However, I still think it's incredibly important cases here. With Roswell, there are still things that can be done. I know my good buddy Frank Kimbler is still pushing to find more material, to get the material he has tested in the appropriate way by an unbiased lab and a lab that knows what they're doing. There are things with aerial mapping and ground penetrating radar and all these fun things that require science and tools and mostly money to execute. So there are always more things that could be done. But for historical purposes and for really having a good grounding in the phenomenon and moving forward with investigation, I think it's good to periodically bring up these classic cases to not only remind current researchers about these cases and the details, because we forget a lot of these things, but also there are becoming so many new people entering the curiosity in this world now at such a rapid pace. There are always people who need to hear about these cases. And it's surprising still, because I speak a lot of Comic-Cons and things, where these are just pop culture audiences. They've never been to a UFO conference. They don't know about UFOs outside of what they see, on Independence Day or, whatever movie or television show Hollywood's presenting. But, a lot of people still don't know. They may know that I think everybody around the world knows that Roswell had something to do with the UFO, just like Area 51. They think it has something to do with aliens, but they don't know the details. There are a lot of people who think that Roswell is in Nevada. They think that Area 51 is in New Mexico. A lot of just the basic details aren't widely known by people entering the field, let alone people just in the general public. So there's a constant need for public education. I think it's great to keep the discussion going with these cases.
Cool. So what's your goal? I mean, I know you were involved in the biggest UFO conference. Other than getting a huge amount of people there, huge numbers, what are you injecting into that to make it happen? And what are you coming up with that's new to make it happen? And what are your goals other than people?
Well, here's the thing. I've been talking for years about and brainstorming with several people in the field about creating a new type of experience when it comes to conferences. I'm no longer involved with the International UFO Congress. I did that for about 6 years, I want to say. And I'm excited for this year. I will be stopping by for sure. That happens in September in Phoenix. And it's recently moved to downtown Phoenix, which is going to make it so much more accessible, such a better venue with more restaurants and bars around, but it's also able to accommodate a much larger audience. And that's great, I think. And the lineup is exciting, lots of new, fresh speakers. And that's, something that was very important to us at the Congress to do every year, was try to not have the same old, right? You look at any UFO conference and it's usually the same group of speakers, the people on the UFO circuit. It's all the same people. And there's nothing wrong with that. These people usually have, new or updated information to say, but also just because they've talked about this before, written about it before, not everybody gets to go to every single UFO conference, right? You always have new people. So you can't deny people the opportunity to have that experience just because, other people had it before. But I think variety is important. And at the Congress, it was always important to us to not just cater to the UFO community either, to have, a little bit of discussion, to have people on both sides of an issue, to have an unbiased look at some of these topics. We'd bring in scientists and things like that, and that was really important to us. But talking about what to do with the UFO conference has been on my mind for many years now, and I've wanted to do my own event with my colleagues at my company I have now called Rogue Planet, and knowing that, to me, the social aspect is tremendously valuable, not only for the experience itself, but for the community, to sort of highlight what we talked about, how the UFO community isn't as it's portrayed on social media. Exactly. It still kind of is. There's still a little bit of that bickering, but mostly people are civil. And it's good to get people together to talk about these things and to give people the opportunity to have these discussions. So trying to come up with an idea to do a hybrid conference, not a conference full of hybrids, mind you. That's a different story. But a conference that is part conference, but I guess not mostly, or maybe mostly, but part conference, part party. A similar idea to the Storm Area 51, but done better, done in a better venue, a place where people can come. It's like a vacation. They can hear some people talk, but in a less formal atmosphere. Certainly with the bar open all the time, you've got to have that. So people can, have a beer and listen to people talk about UFOs on stage. That's pretty awesome. But some live music, some opportunities for socializing. That's really what people are paying money to come to these events to do, to be with other people, to be able to share their stories. Because like you said, so many people just want somebody to listen to them. They can't get that anywhere else. So creating a place where people can come, share their stories, hear other stories, brainstorm, try to figure this whole mess out, and just have fun. That's what I want to create. I haven't figured out how to do it yet or how to properly execute it, but I hope to do that in the coming years.
I would love to see about half the people there they don't know anything about UFOs, they're off the street.
Yeah.
And to get that kind of crowd in there and mix it up a little bit, just because, they're storytellers, out there who would just turn so many different people on. And I think I'm seeing that now. I think that the whole paranormal community has exploded, and you're going beyond the normal group. And I'm not sure what it is and why it's happening, but I mean, we've never seen more on TV. We've never seen more books. We've never seen more of podcasts, so it's everywhere and you can't really ignore it. So
here's my take on that. I think, like we mentioned earlier, I think everybody is interested in UFOs and or extraterrestrials in some capacity. They might just be interested in, sci-fi. They might be interested in space and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. They might be interested in UFOs. They might be interested in alien abductions. Like there's just a wide interest in these subjects. So you have that already, but social media, what it's done is really shown the world that there's a lot of everything. There's a group of people who are interested in absolutely everything. You see this stuff that, is being presented that, once was locked in a closet and you thought, well, I'm the only weirdo who thinks about UFOs or wants to talk about UFOs. But then you see that there are countless others online posting about the same stuff you find interesting. Then, that opens the floodgates. And I think that's what we've seen. People started understanding it was okay to talk about this subject. People find each other, they get in the same groups on Facebook, kind of goes from there.
Yeah, I think that, these different people that we haven't heard from in the past, we get to hear from them a lot more often. And the other thing is that, there's a lot of different things, people, there's so many aspects of this whole UFO community and there's so many different people that believe so many different things. We have people like me who I'll go into that some other time, but you have people that believe there are absolutely hundreds of thousands of different, aliens out there and they experience those types of things. And you have people like Tom DeLonge who, I wanted to back up just a little bit. His passion for this is unparalleled. I've never seen anything like this because, there's nothing he doesn't know about, but then again, his enthusiasm is huge. And to me, that would just burn me out. I can't even imagine being like that all the time, but he is that way all the time. And, 15 years ago, he was like that. And I know the band used to give him a bad time, and that was kind of unfortunate. But however, now when they talk about him, we knew he was going to do this and we knew this was going to happen. But to me, I'm thinking, was it one of those things that they could hardly wait till it happened and he left and they wouldn't have to listen to it? Or did they, did they embrace it and just, live part of that life with Tom? I don't know, but, so what's coming?
They totally lived it with him, and
I'm hoping they did.
They're all good friends. They're the best of friends, and they'll get back together one of these days. But no, Tom's always in contact with those guys, and I think he's all of his harping on UFOs during tours and stuff. I think he swayed those guys a little bit, opened their eyes a little bit, especially Travis. I think Travis is more open to all that stuff now too.
Well, and the thing was too that I would like to see them get back together. It's his band, and
it is.
I miss him there.
It's still his band. He's still wrapped up in that. Don't worry about that. Yeah, I think that'll come, in the not too distant future. But until that happens, we have Angels and Airwaves, and Angels and Airwaves is just ramping up. With a lot more activity. I mean, they're going on tour, which they haven't done in a long time. They've got a new album they're working on. So, it's not the same as having Tom and Blink-182, but it's still good music, and it's an awesome band.
So what's coming up next for you? What are you gonna do to excite the paranormal community or other communities?
This is a discussion I have regularly with my colleagues, trying to figure out some grand plans because we have a lot of video content we want to do, and trying to figure out how we want to properly execute that, whether it's in documentary format or if it's web series format, or we want to try something with even grander plans. But I don't know. My focus right now for this year is trying to get my life back under control and stop working so much, certainly on things that don't make me happy. I'm trying to maximize my happiness in life. And so I haven't quite figured out how to do that, but one of those steps is stop putting so much on my plate. So I have a couple book projects I'm working on, and scaled back just a little bit. So those aren't going to be out as soon as I wanted them to be, but I am working on some books. I love writing, so those are some things I'm working on for the future. But right now I'm focusing on my podcast called Unknown. I know you love podcasting. I love podcasting too. It's just so much fun. It's what I like to spend my time doing. So, that's been a lot of fun. And, just at events, like ELEON Con, I speak at ELEON Con pretty regularly and get to do on-stage podcast recordings. And that is just endless fun,
cool.
Having a live audience.
I love that.
For your podcast. It's so much fun.
Right.
So I love doing that. Probably do a little more than that. I tried to scale back some of my speaking engagements too, because that's also exhausting. But and I find more and more now when I go to events, I like to just hang out, and talk with people and see friends and stuff, and not be on a mandatory contracted schedule of
right.
things that I have to be here and do this at this time. Because I don't get to see a lot of these people all that often anymore. So it's fun to go to some of these events where you see a lot of friends and colleagues from years past and just hang out. So that's what I'm trying to do more of. But we're talking about doing some fun stuff. And I mentioned possibly a conference of sorts coming down the road. So that's what
I'll throw this at you. I love live one-on-one or a group podcast, and the reason why it's because what we're doing here is great. But when you get people together in a room, and maybe it's on video, maybe it's not, but you actually see facial expressions, you can look at that person across the table and it just adds a different, I don't know, something different to the conversation. It's a totally different conversation than like what we're doing right now. So it's, a group of people and it's just really lively. There's a lot of energy. I love that. So, I love podcasting and I'll listen to any of them. I mean, if it's live and I know these guys do a live podcast, I'll listen to every single one of them. I love it. I think it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I have a tremendous love for video, and I love creating video content. It's just, it takes more effort and there's more production involved. And, I actually have to put on pants, that's fun.
You got to dress up and do your hair.
Right.
That's why
because people are looking. So that's why the podcast is great when it's
is
audio
great for
format.
That.
But that being said, we're really going to start focusing on more video content. And some of that video content is going to, address what you just mentioned. And that is bringing a video element to the podcast, to offer that sort of behind the scenes look, but having our cameras on when we do this, so people can see when we're talking, and then we'll be able to see who we're talking to at the same time, and seeing facial expressions and things like that makes a conversation more enjoyable.
For some reason, you get to talk about anything. I mean, if it's a TV, if it's a talk show, you're limited and people are limited there. I mean, I know that Joe Rogan, he's done 6-hour shows before or longer, and it's incredible that people do that. And then they just publish them and you get to watch whatever you want, but he's broken them up into many different portions, or you can watch the same thing or watch the whole thing. It's amazing. And I think that, for some reason we can do it that way. And I don't know why yet, but I'm going to go for it and it's fine. I love it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm a I'm a content creator, and I always look for how to maximize the content that I create. And, that's a great thing that you can do because people consume content in different ways. You have people who want to watch a video on YouTube. You have people who want to listen to the audio in their car. You have people who, and I still haven't figured this out, but it's a large group. They want to listen to the audio from your show on YouTube.
Right.
I don't get that.
I don't either.
But I don't know. A lot of people listen to podcasts on YouTube. Mm-hmm. They're not, it's just in the background. They just have it playing. But that's why you have to have your podcast on YouTube, because there is a big audience that listens to podcasts, just listens to podcasts on YouTube. But I love putting content out in various formats because, people are different. People have different ways they consume.
Podcasting is a vehicle for the vehicle too, because it's, we live in our cars now. There's so many people that spend so much time in their cars. I don't care if you work 30 hours a week. It just seems like we end up being there, and it's just a perfect compliment. But, there's music people. I love music. I mean, I have a hard time bouncing back and forth and what I'm going to listen to next. But, it's podcasting, and I think one of the things that it brings to me is I'm learning it, and you never get tired of learning it. And it's really cool when you can figure something out that people like, and it's just so simple, and I love it. But
it is, and I love following the industry too, and seeing the developments in it, what new technology is coming out, and just how the podcasting industry overall is adapting and growing, and all the new things that are spawning from it, and how things like Nielsen are adapting to fit into this weird world of podcasting. It's just wildly fun. I've been podcasting for more than a decade now. It's just so much fun. I love it.
Jason McClellan, who is a podcaster, author, TV personality, and journalist with a proclivity for all sorts of geekery, has been my guest tonight. Jason, I'd love to absolutely give you the final word.
Final word? Well, I don't know if I have anything clever to say, but I do want to thank you for having me on. I know that, it's a gamble having me on because I am so outrageous. But, I got to talk about beer and UFOs. So
yeah, I could do
thank you, my friend. Those are two of my favorite things.
Jason McClellan, thank you so much. I appreciate this so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by ELEON. You can find all ELEON's work online at Heart Dance Records.